AVC, Tony here with a little announcement about this record, Bookends. The fourth record from Simon and Garfunkel. Very significant record as far as I'm concerned. It's a concept record. And I want to thank MoFi for choosing this one to reissue. It's on pre-order now, $59.99, super vinyl, 180 gram, Stoughton jacket. Release date to be determined. Obviously, we don't know when it'll be released, but it's numbered, I believe. I believe it's 4,000, a numbered version. That doesn't mean it'll never be available after 4,000 go, but 4,000 if you want a number. And this is my original. I'm going to show you this. This is a 2i Columbia. Here's an inner. I'm not sure if this is the original inner. That's that jacket. I also have a really nice Japanese pressing of this that I received from Big John, my brother-in-law. Got it for me one Christmas one year. And that's the 2i. This is near mint. And the reason I want to thank MoFi is because of this reissue, I went through my archives and I pulled this record out. Probably haven't listened to it in 40 years. It's not my go-to Simon & Garfunkel record. I really gear more toward the Paul Simon's solo efforts. I kind of dig those. But this record is unbelievably good. It's a concept record. Side one is considered a life cycle. It's about their youth. America's on that side. It has and it bookends with the main theme, and the end theme is a bookend. Life cycle's a bookend from childhood to old age. And there's some great little snippets in there that apparently Art Garfunkel recorded on tape of elderly people talking about their lives, just going through their motions. And it's almost like a Scorsese snapshot on audio. You know, Martin Scorsese in his early days of filmmaking would go to his old neighborhood. He would actually tape and film his mom and dad in their regular Italian routine. And this is a great little snippet on here of some audio. Side two is fantastic. Side two picks it up, and it's actually singles that were unreleased and unreleased stuff from The Graduate, which is this album. This is an OG Graduate record. And on side two, they reprise Mrs. Robinson. So Mrs. Robinson was available for the first time on a Simon & Garfunkel record. This is considered a soundtrack, but it's on here. This is fantastic. And of course, if you all know the lyrics, I could read them, but it's indelible. One of the choruses, "Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? Our nation holds its lonely eyes to you." And when Joe heard that, Joe calls his manager or publicist or agent and says, "What is this with this Simon and Garfunkel talking about me and this record, Mrs. Robinson?" And the manager, the agent said, "No, Joe, that's really a compliment. You know, it's not a disparaging remark." So Joe was all pissed off. And I know Joe DiMaggio pretty well. I have a lot of his books. And he was a pretty frugal guy. He was in a little bit like a Sean Connery, who he never thought he had enough payment because everyone on top of him always made a lot more money. Connery always wanted more from Eon, from Broccoli and Saltzman. And DiMaggio always wanted more from the Yankees and whoever he dealt with later on as sponsors. And there was a saying, I don't know if it's DiMaggio said, after these big salaries were coming through in the 70s, and they asked DiMaggio, what would you say to Steinbrenner if you met Steinbrenner and you had to negotiate? He would shake his hand and he would say, "Hello, partner," because that's the kind of money a Joe DiMaggio would have demanded in today's market, because we're seeing, these outrageous salaries of, $40 million a season to play quarterback. It's crazy, but that's just a a little Joe DiMaggio thing. I love that song. Side 2 on this record is just great. I have some quick liner notes that I wrote up, or my notes. But getting back to the release of this record, no discounts on this record. I'm from MoFi, Music Direct MoFi. Pre-order only. It's a 1/4-inch tape, 15 inches per second, analog copy to a DSD 256 to analog console to LAD. So it has that, middle part of a digital file, but it's still gonna sound great. And like I said, it comes with a stout jacket. Now this record originally came with this poster. I'm going to show it. I don't have the poster, but it originally came with this poster, and it looks like could be a New York Bridge. I'm not sure what bridge it is, but it came with that poster. And it's funny, when the boys, Simon and Garfunkel, decided to add a poster to it, Columbia decided to up the price of the record. And I think it went to a $5.98 list. And it was Clive Davis who said, look, if you're putting a poster in there, we're going to charge for that poster. So it increased the list price to $5.79, which I really think is a $5.98 list. I'm not sure if Columbia had a $5.79 list. But this is the poster. And if you have that poster, that's cool. And I'll go over what I think that if that poster should be included in the reissue. I could say it now. I hope it is for $60. Put the poster in there, MoFi, but that's already been done. So that came with a poster, and Clive Davis increased the list price. Now this is interesting, and this was in the research that I compiled when I looked this up. Now I don't have the poster. I have a couple copies of the original, and I'm going to show I showed the 2i Columbia. And it sounds great. It's near mint. I'm going to talk about that versus my other pressing. So we increased it to $5.79 or $5.98, which in 2023 dollars is $51 US. So in 1968, $5.79 was the equivalent of $51. So when we pay $60 for these records, going back to when I was in grammar school or whatever, $6 was $52 in today's market, 2024, 2020. So it's really crazy. Money right now has no value. It has no value. So, but getting back to this, I think this is a great release. This is going to be fantastic. It's a 33 1/3. It's a MoFi. MoFi's getting back to doing 33 1/3. It's cheaper for them, cheaper for us. And maybe that little extra you get on a 45, really sonic-wise, fidelity-wise, doesn't really call for an extra $40 or $50 to spend on that. But this record, the original record, engineered by Haley, and just amazing sound quality. It's a concept record, and it's only 15 minutes a side. So the originals sound great because it has all that wax to go to, to use for the groove. So, you audio people know that if a record's 25 minutes long, those grooves are squeezed in. The fidelity is not able to explode as it would with a 15 or a 17-minute record. And, back then it was all tube. So this record sounds great. The one I have sounds great. I was kind of contemplating, do I really need the reissue? Then I pulled out the Japanese copy that I have. And that's this one. And you can see the Sony up there. This doesn't have an obi, but it does have the, let me see if I can find it, the inner Japanese material insert. You can see that there. And I'll show you the label. Now, the funny thing about this record is I was listening to this after I listened to the original before I did this record. And again, I want to thank MoFi, because MoFi kind of forced me to pull this out of the archives out of my records. Like I said, this is not my go-to Paul Simon Simon and Garfunkel record, but it will be for a while now. Here's the Japanese label. This is mint. I don't think this has ever been played. I just cleaned it. My VPI, cleaned it with a fluid, rinsed it, cleaned it again, rinsed it. So this is just perfect. This has a good fidelity for a Japanese pressing. It has a good bass line. But what's interesting in this record, it popped more than the 2i domestic. It popped for me. I said, wow, the acoustic guitars, the drums and the drum is Hal Blaine plays drums on this, the great session guy from, I think, from the Hitmen or something back in California. But of course, this record was recorded between 66 and 67 up to 68. So some of the tracks for The Graduate could have been recorded in California. I don't know if Hal Blaine traveled to New York, to Columbia. I don't really know the minutia of that, but you guys out there who know your Paul Simon, I just think the Japanese sounds great. The American sounds great, but the Japanese may be considered bright. After I listened to the Japanese, I went back and listened to Mrs. Robinson and America, my two favorite tracks. And what I learned from going back, actually the first time I listened to the Japanese press, the channels are reversed on some songs. The bass on one prominent bass line is on the left channel on the Japanese pressing, and on the original it's in the right channel. Some of the other tracks are the same. So I don't know what happened. Do they get tapes and then the engineers track and reverse them? But I thought that was interesting that they were reversed. And I just want to say again that this is going to be a killer record for MoFi. I think this is more significant of a release than the simultaneous being released announcement of Santana Abraxas. This is a very important record. It sounds so fresh today. Side one is kind of like held down because it's more of a bio type of thing by Simon, as far as him and Garfunkel's growing up in New York. But side two just kicks butt. It's just amazing. And like I said, the Japanese, this one, Japanese pressing sounds great. The 2i that I have sounds great. This is a near mint 2i. But they all have their places. So I'm going to probably order the new MoFi, even though I'm happy with what I have. I'm going to order it because I really want to hear it, and I know it's going to be knocked out of the park. Now again, 15 minutes aside, there's a lot of room to give that a organic sonic boom where you're immersed, and it's a happy record. When America comes on, I actually got the chills. I love that song, and there in some of the notes that I read, this is considered a concept record, and it also has a few tracks that are very Beatle-ish in the drumming and the almost backward type of drumming and the bass line on some of the songs. So people have said that Paul was influenced by Sgt. Pepper, which came out a year earlier, and I think he was also influenced by Pet Sounds, which came out around the same time as Sgt. Pepper in the Summer of Love, or 66. Not sure if Pet Sounds came out in 66, but that's a long time ago. Anyway, this came out in 68, so it's after those two records. And Paul closes it with At the Zoo, talks about the zoo, and it's interesting. He talks about, now this is just my craziness, but he talks about, let's see, where is this? About the orangutans at the zoo being skeptical. And It's funny because in the Planet of the Apes movies, that's what the orangutans are. So, Paul had that in 1968, and I'm just thinking, I just saw the new Planet of the Apes movie on TV. I've seen it at the movies, but the orangutan is always the thinker, the wiser, so it's kind of funny. That was just a little side note, but and another fact of this record that Mrs. Robinson for The Graduate was the first rock record to win a Grammy. The 11th Grammy Award went to Best Rock Song was Mrs. Robinson, so that was cool. This record is 234 on the Rolling Stones 500 Best Albums of All Time. It could be, the numbers could change, but I think that's about right. And again, Hal Blaine is playing drums, and you could look up this again. But I really think that Simon was influenced by Sgt. Pepper, Pet Sounds. They actually out Beach Boy the Beach Boys on this. The harmonies between him and Art, it's sublime. You don't even realize sometimes that it's two people. They out harmonized Crosby, Stills and Nash. They out harmonized the Isley Brothers, the Everly Brothers, and the Isley Brothers. But it's just so good. It's really I think it's a great pick for them, and I think this record's going to probably sell pretty quickly at that price point. And like I said, $50 was $6 back in 1968 when this record came out, which is hard to believe. I don't know why, we still think back then. I didn't think the $6 was astronomical, but I still think today $60 is a lot of money for a record. But then again, there's a lot of expenses of doing it right. You have to buy the tapes from Sony Columbia. They have to get the rights. They have to get the rights as a 33 1/3, as a 45. The stout jackets must be expensive. Marketing these things are expensive. So whatever, MoFi's doing the right thing. I think Rhino was cool in releasing those great high fidelity series audiophile records at 33 1/3 at a great price point, which is still below the MoFi, but it's still created, I think, a little bit of a depression in prices, because if Rhino could do it at 40, MoFi could do a single record the right way, MoFi quality record at $60 or whatever it is. So again, here's the cover. This is my OG. This has the person who owns its name. I didn't buy this new. I was only a young lad at the time. Couldn't do it. And before I leave, I'm going to show some of my more unique Simon and Garfunkel records and my Paul Simon records. This is The Graduate OG. I'm not sure if this is a Columbia Masterworks, the gray label. This was the soundtrack. So Columbia would do a gray label for some of the soundtracks, and the classicals had a different color label. So that's an OG. Here we have a beautiful Obi of Still Crazy, which was a great one-step. If you haven't picked up that one-step, one of the best sounding one-steps of all time. And that's that. This has the Japanese Obi with some other records from the boys. A quad record of his first solo album, which is great. If you're going to do another one, please consider this MoFi. I'm sure it's been done, but this is a quad, which means that the mixes will sound different. Here's the inner, which means the mixes will be a little different on a stereo cartridge and setup. But that's a really nice copy. And last but not least, another present from Big John, who used to buy Japanese records and bundle them so that shipping wasn't outrageous. It would cost you $20 or so to ship a single record, but it would cost you the same amount of money to ship 5 records from Japan. So he had a really good connection. And this is unique. This is a all-time greatest hits collection. I'm not sure if this is also a domestic version of this, but this is the Japanese. And it also has the strip, which has the collection of records from Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. Simon and Garfunkel. So really cool. Thanks, Big John. Again, quad, solo. And I love Art Garfunkel solo stuff. I have all his solo records and most of the ones when I was buying records. And I'm sure there's a bunch of later ones that came out on CD that I don't have. But I love the Art Garfunkel solo stuff. So once again, SUPERVINYL MOFI, pre-order now. Analog copy to DSD 256, to analog console to a lathe. That's it. But this is a masterpiece. The harmonies out-harmonized, like I said, the Beach Boys and whoever else harmonized in the world of rock music. So, order it now if you want to number it. I'm sure later on it'll come out. It'll still be pressed as a non-numbered MoFi, but obviously, if you want it, get it now. If you don't have a clean copies are probably hard to find. But this is a great concept record. There's a lot of Beatle influences in this. And, one thing I wanted to point out where this is just in my crazy mind when I was listening to America. I'm thinking maybe Paul listened to She's Leaving Home. She's leaving home after living alone for so many years. And Kathy, who is the female in America, is maybe the person who left home in the UK, met her man at the motorcade, who is no name in She's Leaving Home. And they flew into America and flew to the West Coast and drove across America, because we know they went to Pittsburgh, they went to Michigan, they're on the New Jersey Turnpike going to New York, I would imagine. So if you listen to that song and after you listen to She's Leaving Home, which is from Sgt. Pepper's, maybe you'll see a connection. But it's a good answer record. It's a good sequel, part 2, because they still were lost. They were lost in America. That's another story. But people try to find their way, and this record by Paul Simon wrote the majority, I guess. Just crazy, and crazy good. Number 234 of 500 best records of all time. I think that's fair. So thank you again, MoFi, for making me pull this record. And I hope you guys get to listen to it if you don't have it. It's on YouTube. And here's another influence of Sgt. Pepper, lyrics printed on the record. Lyrics weren't printed on the record in those days. I don't know how many were printed on the record before this, 68. This came out in April of 68. But Sgt. Pepper was one of the first, maybe the first, to print lyrics on a rock record. So keep rocking. I want to thank all the subs. Thank everybody for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're going to pick this up. And please let me know if you have this record, if you love this record. Once again, I think MoFi did a nice selection on picking this and choosing this to do a MoFi reissue, 33 1/3. So thank you again. If you haven't subbed, please sub. Really helps us out. Elvis says to sub. He can't talk because of copyright. But here we go. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you later. Ciao.